Welcome to another episode of our personal empowerment audio series, Finding Yourself in Paradise. Hi, I'm Michael Benner.
And I'm Steve Snyder, and our program today is on the subject of curiosity. We're going to talk about why people are curious about the things they are curious about. But what I find most interesting is things that people, I would think, would be curious about, they don't seem to be. It's interesting to see how curious people get. In fact, I think today's measurement is, are you curious enough to Google it?
Google is revolutionary. It does transform things. I can say that as a journalist. Curiosity, our theme for today. Well, let's see. I suppose, Steve, we should begin by acknowledging that it's likely that curiosity is built into our DNA. There's some innate survival mechanism in being curious, don't you think?
I do. I think it goes back to peekaboo, actually. It goes back about as far as you can. We've always been interested in looking into new things and seeing what else is out there, exploring, to boldly go where no one has gone before. It is inherent in the human being. You know, I think that curiosity is in there. It's just, I think as we go through school and we go through socialization, we get to the point where we're afraid to check into those things that we're curious about. We become curious. We have a state of I wonder, but we're afraid to take the step and explore the thing that we're wondering about.
Yeah, isn't there an Einstein quotation about he who does not wonder or stand wrapped in awe is as good as dead? I do feel sorry for people that don't ponder, that don't set aside time to just wonder, as we would say in the 60s, to trip out,
Yeah, to be in fascination, to be in awe. Yeah, in that state of wow.
Wonder. And Carl Sagan said, somewhere in the universe, something incredible is about to be discovered.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, now that's an attitude.
Dylan said, stick with me, baby, stick with me right now. Things are about to get interesting right about now. Stick with me anyhow. Things are about to get interesting right about now.
That we have so much power and authority to make our lives interesting just by being interested in them. And to be interested in other people, to be part of managing other people is to be genuinely interested in who they are, genuinely interested in who they are, the people you work with. There are probably even people in your family you haven't thought about twice. What if you became really curious about them?
It seems the most obvious benefit is if you become curious about people, they'll think you like them more. They'll think you're interested in them, and they will think you like them more, and therefore are more likely to like you more right back.
Or certainly find something about them that is interesting or curious.
I mean, if you can't find anything about them that's interesting, that's really interesting.
That in and of itself is a big truth. But this idea that life is what you make it is a platitude that everybody says, but I'm afraid few people believe. And so we tend to accept this moderate view of existence. We lie to each other every day. How you doing? Fine. No, you're not. You're not doing fine at all.
But when you ask how you're doing, are you really curious about how they're doing?
No, they're not.
Yeah, most people are not.
No, if you told them the truth, they wouldn't have time to listen. It's one of the things I like about a rural lifestyle, wherever in the world you happen to be. If you're outside of a city, the people you encounter are more likely to have a little bit of time to stand there and talk story for 10 minutes. They're not in such a big hurry.
More, especially here in Hawaii, I think.
It's true, but I think even in Iowa.
Yeah, probably true. I've only lived in Los Angeles and Hawaii, and rural Hawaii at that. So,
yeah, folks have time for you. There's still porches with rocking chairs on them where folks sit at night and watch the grass grow. And to have that is to create a space in your life to wonder, to ponder. It makes life so rich that I would never want to give that up again consciously. And so I guess I'm making an appeal to everyone who's listening to this program and finds themselves in a big city environment, the frenzy, the pace at which you're living your life. Have you given that up? That curiosity, that wonderment, that that ritual of at least once a day, taking a few minutes out to just take a breath, relax, watch the sun go down, whatever. In many ways, to be curious, to ponder, to wonder, Steve, is a lot like yoga. It involves stretching, in this case the mind, not a muscle, through relaxation, which is breathing and letting go of that pedantic drumbeat, trains of thought and streams of consciousness that even when we don't apply ourselves to thinking, always there in the background, always chunka, 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 chunka. And to have lost the ability to let go of that, at least to some degree, to quiet it, is tragic, because with it goes all this imagination.
Exactly. If you're curious as to how to be more curious, then just make room for it. Just make some space where you can be curious because you're not doing anything else. See, that's the thing. You really can't be curious about anything when you're specifically doing something else. There's got to be a space for it. We call this place paradise, so you can call it whatever you want, but it's a place where you feel safe and where you're not figuring stuff out, not making stuff up, not trying to do anything, but just giving yourself a break from all that. To be curious, you must feel safe. Because it's like you can't draw on the cave walls unless you have meat in the cave. You got to have the basics of survival covered. You got to feel safe. And then your mind can go and experience what has been called throughout history wanderlust, or flights of fancy, to be able to go and leave the here and now and go off into, like, I wonder what would happen if, or I wonder how I could, or all the greatest things that have ever happened that human beings ever did began with, I wonder how I could do this thing, And unless there's some room or space to do that's the great question. That's what we have to ask. I think the most important question we have to start with is, I wonder what I could do. I wonder what I'm capable. I wonder what my potential is. I'm really curious about what's possible. Even if I don't have time to pursue that, and most likely I won't have time, because I could think of 20 things that potentially I could be great at. I couldn't pursue them all. But just knowing about what I'm curious that I could be great at, discovering that tells me about myself, gives me great insight into my gifts and talents and abilities. It gives me great insight into the makeup of me, because the kinds of things that I would be curious about tell me a great deal more about me than they tell me about those things.
Yeah, very good point. There's several programs on cable TV now about this kind of stuff. I mean, how stuff works, how things are made, how they do that.
Yeah, I think that's cool.
Yeah, a whole television program. Have you ever watched these programs?
I have not.
It's fascinating. I mean, to see how things are made. I'm trying to think. One was just an expose of how a letter goes through the post office.
Cool.
Now, all my life I've had some vague idea of what was going on, and I remember when zip codes came in about 100 years ago, and then barcodes after that, and some vague idea of how that sorting goes on.
I still have the image of this lonely guy in the dead letter office, where they couldn't read the handwriting and the machines couldn't read. He's all by himself sorting through these illegible letters. I don't know if that exists or not, but that's been my fancy.
I'm sure it probably does, but also these machines that are going at incredible rates of speed and optical scanning and all of that stuff, to see how foods are made. And so how does this work, and how are things done? That, to me, stretches the mind and opens us to, well, how could I apply that as a problem-solving skill to this problem I'm facing? And if I were a creative genius, as smart as these innovators, how could I bring that wonder, that sense of curiosity, to this problem I need solving? Much is said right now about the difficult economic times and how there are no jobs, and that's certainly true enough. But there have never been more opportunities. The very fact that the need is so high for change should be read from the other side of the equation, I think, which is, wow, look at the opportunity. What needs to be done? Are you frustrated by not being able to find a job or get a job? Be curious about what needs to be done. What do human beings want done that is not getting done, or is being done in an expensive way, or an inefficient way, or just a stupid way, or a cheap and ineffective way. What human need, product or service, could you or a group of people provide that people really want, and then go meet that human need? You can't argue that there's no human need out there. Our needs have never been greater. So doesn't it make sense then to the curious that your opportunities to be an innovator, to be a creator, to be of significance and make some money at the same time have never been greater?
That's true. Our needs are greater than ever. Our wants are even greater than our needs. So there's a huge market out there for anything from anything. You can market dehydrated water if you marketed it right. Just add water and you'll have water. You know, I mean, has it ever occurred to you that Evian is naive spelled backwards? You can market anything, and the opportunity exists. What's most curious is, why are some people curious in that way? Why do some people's minds go there? You know, like, what else could I do? What else could I be? What else could I create? And other people go to, I wonder what's on TV tonight. You know, that's the extent of their curiosity is, I wonder what's on the boob tube tonight. Why is it that some people are way more curious, whether they act on the curiosity or not? I mean, whether they actually go to Google and look it up, or whether they just wonder, why do some people do that and why do some people not do that? And it seems to me, it comes back to that initial thought, which is that there's no room to do that. You don't do that. If you're busy, if you've always got something going and there's no room to stop, then you don't have time to wonder. It all comes down to creating the space. You don't have to learn how to wonder. You know, it's a natural ability. It all comes down to creating a sacred space for it to occur.
Well, it could be scary, you know. That which is unknown, to many people, their default position is, if I don't know it, I don't understand it, then I'm frightened of it. Maybe for whatever reason, they just haven't had sufficient experience with how wonderful it feels to realize. I mean, bottom line, Steve, there's a wonderful feeling in the body that comes from realization.
And every baby knows it. Every child growing up knows it. Every toddler. It's just, it gets taken away as we get so full of everything else.
Or jaded and cynical, and I've seen it all. But again, remember the wisdom. He who knows doesn't tell, and he who tells doesn't know. The person that thinks they know it all clearly knows very little.
Sure. Beginner's mind is the wisest mind that could be.
The mind is a fractal. Are we all hip to fractals now? Here we're in 2009. Are we clear on the idea of infinity in natural patterns, and the work that's been done to show the way clouds form and the way branches of a tree form, whether it's a flower or the shell of a creature that lives at sea? It's the same principle that's involved.
And if you're not curious about that, why not? You know, that's what you want to ask yourself. It's something like that, the very nature of nature itself, you know, being revealed and unveiled for the first time in the known human awareness. And you're not curious about that? Or you're not curious about the pictures we've taken from the Hubble telescope of the galaxies far? You're not curious about why the things we know about the human brain that we didn't even know 10 years ago? Why are you not curious? That's what I'm curious about.
Why all the spirals, if nothing else? When Euclidean geometry is circles, squares, rectangles, triangles, polygraphs. No, that's a lie detector.
Yeah.
Polygrams. All these angular shapes. And nature rejects all of that. Nature doesn't grow squares or perfect circles. There's much more flourish. Nature looks more paisley. Looks more like when you close your eyes and rub them a little too hard with your fingers, and you get those little patterns in the inside of your eyelids. Those are fractals, and whether you zoom in or zoom out, you see the same patterns being repeated over and over. It's the geometry of irregular shapes. I bring it up because the mind works in that same way. Anytime you think you know something, a red flag should go up. A warning sign should pop on the dashboard on the inside of your forehead. Some bell ought to ring that goes, "Warning, Will Robinson, warning, warning, you're getting full of yourself. Danger, you think you know something." Because now we're turning off curiosity. We're turning off imagination, which even Einstein said was more important than knowledge.
Because even if you do know that you're right, maybe there's a better right answer that didn't exist when you first thought you had the right answer.
Now, how many people think about better right answers? Well, we've talked about it on this program, but this is the kind of mental calisthenics that we're talking about. And even choosing to do a show like this about curiosity is that, just because it's not broken doesn't mean it doesn't need fixing. Maybe it's working just fine. I've got a car out here that works just fine, but it's still burning old fossil fuels, dead dinosaurs, and poisoning the environment. So in the bigger sense, it's not working fine, and we need to be curious and not cynical. I saw a television program not long ago where the moderator was saying, essentially, you have to accept acid rain, pollution, and global warming, or be willing to go back to the 19th century to horse-drawn carriages and kerosene lamps.
A little either or, don't you think?
I think very much a false dichotomy. But that's typical thinking, and the more frenzied we get, the more harried and hurried is our existence, the more frenetic, the more likely we are to think in these simple everything or nothing kind of terms, dead or alive, all right, all wrong, all differences being opposites, no permutations. Well, if there's only two ways anything can be, why be curious? And that's a kind of a death that I see around me, and it's just so tragic. Because again, if nothing else, why do we do what we do? Why do people dance all over the world? Every culture that ever encountered any other culture, they found they danced. Why does everybody dance? Because it feels good, right? Every culture has its alcoholic beverage, some sort of fermented fruit. How do you explain that? Because it feels good, in moderation, of course. Why do we do anything? Why do we love each other and develop families and friendships? Because it feels good. There's nothing wrong with being a feel-good society if it's, balanced appropriately.
Especially because it feels good to be in integrity, and it feels good to live an ethical life.
To tell the truth feels good. And to realize.
That feels good.
I love the word.
Self-aware. To wake up, that feels good.
To become real. This is like Data wanting to be a real human being. Yeah, Pinocchio. Or Velveteen Rabbit wanting to be real. To be realized. How real are you?
Realize, that's such a key thing. As you know, I've been working for all these years with CEOs, and one question I always ask them at these seminars, I teach them like how they can create prosperity consciousness and become more philanthropic, and then I talk about how to become masterful at something. I use golf as a metaphor. And then I ask them all, what else would you like to be great at? And there's a stunned silence. Hundreds and hundreds of CEOs I've asked this question, and these are busy, busy people, granted, but they don't stop to think, well, what else do I want to be great at? I know what I already am great at, but what else that I'm not great at now, what I like to be great at? That thought, there's no time for that thought to occur to them. And I think that's really the tragedy, because, again, even if you don't actually have time to pursue becoming great at that thing, thinking about what I want to be great at unveils gifts, talents, abilities, insights into yourself that there's no other way you could learn more about your calling that way, more about what's really right for you that way. It's a really important question to ask. And to me, the fact that we're not more curious about who we could be, more curious about ourselves and our human potential is the biggest waste of all.
Maslow called this self-actualization.
Right.
And to be actualized, this, as you and I were discussing not long ago, became popular in the 60s along with Esalen and encounter groups. And And, of course, Silva Mind Control and EST.
LifeSpring, Insight,
All
lots
came
of
out
great
of this
programs.
stuff. Even Scientology, to some extent, was born of these early breakthroughs in what later came to be called pop psych.
Or mind science.
That, too, another good phrase, except that...
Not everybody calls it that.
Yeah, and you get Christian Science and religious science and Scientology. But it's as if we got almost to the top of Maslow's hierarchy and then we forgot about it. I mean, who do we know? And I'm asking the listener, who do you know who talks about self-actualization or self-realization? Most of us are so stuck or deliberately dedicated to the hamster wheel, the rat race of existence, of earning and spending, producing, consuming, buying new stuff, repairing the stuff, acquiring replacements for it. We just never really seem to get to that final rung that is sitting back and enjoying the fruits of our labors. We're too busy doing it and paying those bills. And when do we sit back? People say, well, that's what retirement's for. Well, if you live that long, really?
Yeah, I remember the character Travis McGee in mystery novels. He took his retirement like 1 month at a time here, a month there. He didn't wait until he got old. He took his retirement while he was, working.
Spend your kid's inheritance.
That's kind of what I like. I like to think I'm doing too. I'm sort of being in retirement, in and out of retirement, like grooving in and grooving out. One day I'm retired and the next day I'm not. And there's no reason to live in that stressful lifestyle 24/7. And that's the point. Now, not many people get to be in the place where I'm at, where they get to totally choose how often they want to be in retirement and out of retirement, but everybody gets to add some retiring from that hectic world into every day of their life, no matter how busy they are.
That could be our visualization process. We call them audio journeys. That's a kind of retiring, and you can do it in 5 minutes if you don't have 10 or 15.
Actually, you can do it in 20 seconds if you don't have 5 minutes. But
a single breath.
But I mean, exactly, 5 minutes. Just 10 minutes, 20 minutes makes a huge, huge difference in your life. And a lot of those single breaths or 20 seconds can make a huge difference as well. Just one single breath to release and create some inner peace. One breath takes you out of the escalating spiral of getting more and more stressed. One slow, conscious, deep breath. And then that one breath to take that moment to look before you leap, to take that moment and think about it before you blurt or before you act. And then sometimes you do have 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And when you do, that's when this can be really a wonderful experience, because once you can convince your mind that you're not in the rat race right now, that the yellow flag's gone up and the race is on hold for the moment and everything's safe, then your mind can go into this state of, oh, really? Well, I wonder, or boy, I sure am curious about. The mind will go there if you just open up and give it the opportunity.
And Maslow did call it self-actualization. And we've used the phrase self-realization because if realizing how the microwave works or what a computer does, at least on some level, or what's going on inside the TV set or the radio, just something simple like that feels good to realize and to understand. Imagine the reward of understanding yourself and exploring the individuality. That we won't even debate this. This is, we've got fingerprint evidence and DNA proof that you are unique. And the universe does not clone itself. My God, every grain of sand on every beach in the world is unique. And the cynic always says, well, who checked them all? Well, you spend your life checking them all. I'm convinced. No two snowflakes the same. That's why we rely on DNA.
And even if you could find two snowflakes that were the same, wouldn't that prove the point? If out of those zillions of snowflakes, only two of them were the same, it still shows the amazing uniqueness.
The exception proves the rule.
What are the likelihood that you're the exception, that you're not unique?
So how is it that so many human beings can lead a life devoid of curiosity about that uniqueness?
Once they leave childhood. I've never met a child that didn't have some of that curiosity. But once, and even early on, it's beaten out of some children, but children have that. I think it's lost somewhere along the way.
Well, certainly curious about the world around them. I think there's a certain level of maturity that's necessary to reflect upon yourself, although teenagers certainly go through.
Well, yeah, and I don't know. I think maybe that's all you're reflecting about when you're a little baby.
So I guess that's part of it, just that our teenage years can be so difficult and so confusing. We go through such changes hormonally so quickly. Our identity seems up for grabs, so that if we find a little perch or a little niche in our early 20s, maybe we climb up in that little space and just sort of stay there and identify with that. And who wants to go back to the turmoil? Well, a curious person wants to go back to the turmoil because as you sort it all out, all you need are skills, and we're going to give you those skills. You already have some of them. We're going to help you develop those skills to create the calm emotional nature and the quiet mental nature necessary to really reflect and to do it clearly and to get that wonderful feeling that goes with realizing who you are, realizing who you are not, and why you would not want to be that kind of person, and how to follow your heart. What does make me tick? Why do I care about this more than that? I guess what I'm saying, Steve, is let's not only be curious about why we think the way we think, but when it comes to knowing the self, to self-realization, being curious about why we feel the way we feel. Why do we care about the things that we care about? I don't think it's because we think we should. I think the caring precedes the thinking. In the chicken and the egg of it all, I think the prime mover is emotional. What do you care about? And how much of your identity, much less your motivation, is bound up in that you care about this and not so much about that, and I couldn't care at all about this, couldn't care less.
I mean, aren't you curious about what you'd be curious about if you had the time to be curious about something, you know? And what you'll find is your uniqueness in understanding where does your focused passion go? Where does your focus go? Your focus goes everywhere until it finds something to be passionate about, and it stays there. You know, focus without passion is spacing out. Focus with passion is spacing in. So when you think about what's interesting, what do I wonder about, what am I curious about, your mind goes everywhere until it finds something it really hooks onto, and that's the emotion that causes it to hook onto that thing. So you get the focus and then the passion, and that focused passion brings that higher consciousness to bear. Like, whoa, I'm watching myself paying attention. This is cool. So the bottom line here is, if you had time to be curious, you would be curious, and you would find out a lot about you by finding what you're curious about. Again, it's not all about pursuing those things you're curious about. Everything you're curious about doesn't mean you have to go answer the question or learn about it. Just the question itself, of all the infinite things there are to be curious about, where does your unique mind go when you give it the opportunity to feel safe and to know that it doesn't have to do anything else right now? It has the opportunity to explore.
There are numerous models around awareness or consciousness being magnetic. And if we turn away from the way logic takes us step by step through a thinking process and go to this idea of caring and emotionally being attracted or finding an affinity, I think we can feel that compass, spinning on the pinpoint. I think we can feel that, well, I care about it because I care about it.
It's getting warmer, it's getting colder. It's warmer and warmer.
Yeah,
you feel it. Like this feels better and better. This feels worse and worse. That's pretty obvious.
I give you a good example. My wife cares about the flowers we grow here, but not so much about the vegetables. I'm up in the vegetable garden, happy that she's doing the flowers, doing a great job. It looks beautiful, and I'm especially glad she cares about that because I really.
You can't eat the flowers.
I'd rather grow something I can eat. Yeah. And so it turns out to be a nice division of labor.
Indeed.
And one of those situations.
It's a form and function thing, It happens all the time.
Hand in glove, left hand and right hand.
There you go.
It's complementary in its difference. But let me say it this way. I think that it's very easy to think like other people. But we tend to feel like ourselves.
Nicely said. In fact, the pressure is to think like other people. I think you and I tend to think unlike a lot of other people, but a lot of our thinking is just like other people. But no two people feel the same. And even if they did, they wouldn't be able to prove it. You know, I mean, like,
happy not to the same degree.
Yeah, a happy on a 1 to 10 for me is totally different. If it's a 7 for me, that might be what you would call as a 3 or a 9. I have no idea.
Yeah.
So the bottom line, though, is we are unquestionably unique in terms of our feelings. No two human beings have the same set array of feelings going on inside of their bodies at the same time. No two people are feeling the exact same way at the same time.
I did a training years ago that I called the FLY program, Learn to Fly. And FLY was an acronym for feeling like yourself.
With the self being the self, the higher self.
The higher self being the truth of who you are, not just the characters or roles that you play. And let's bring that up again, too, because if you're not curious in who you are, that means you've settled, in terms of your identity, on one of the roles or characters that you're playing.
Yeah, if you're not curious about who you could be, you've settled for who you were.
Or some strategy that you think is going to work, like I'm going to act like I'm all grown up, and I'm going to play house, and I'm going to move my girlfriend in, and we'll pretend we're married, and it's a disaster, right? Because you're not committed to it, haven't dedicated yourselves to it, haven't communicated clearly about it. Look, everybody plays roles and acts out characters mostly to please or influence other people. We all learned it as a survival skill as children. Your job is to please your parents and, in a sense, to earn the food and the clothing and the shelter and the education and the attention that you're getting. That needs to be earned. That's the message that most kids get anyway. It's not unconditional. You got to do things to make mom and dad happy. Then, to go out into the world as adults, there ought to be at some point a transition to, well, what do I find in my integrity personally fulfilling? And if I can make people happy along the way, I'd like to do that as a follow-on to being in my integrity and doing what I find fulfilling. Too often, however, we never grow up. And we continue this childlike behavior, trying to please other people so that consequently you will get from them the success that you're trying to get. And that's too much manipulation. That's just too much work. It's like trying to play the piano by throwing marbles at the keyboard from across the room. Go over and put your hands on it, get into it, and whatever you do for other people, make that a consequence of what you're doing for yourself. Let's get the pony in front of the cart here.
So by finding out what you're curious about, what you're interested in, what you care about is really maybe the best way to say that, you'll discover that there are other people that you care about too, and you'll find that doing things that serve you and serve other people, that serve the good of all concerned, feels the best of all. So what we're saying is create time in your life for curiosity. Create a space, a curiosity space. Every day, I'm going to take this 5 minutes, this 2 hours, this 10 seconds, whatever it is you got. Your mind will fill the space with all kinds of wonder, but make some space each day for curiosity to take hold, for the mind to go away from the mundane, away from the is. The is a great place to be most of the time, but once in a while it's nice to expand and see what the could be looks like. So take some time each day to close your eyes and go to paradise and take a look at what you care about, what fascinates you, what interests you, what makes you go, wow. Doing that does wonders for your system. Wonder does wonders for your system.
And if, like so many of us, you had a difficult childhood, you were told constantly that you were bad, inadequate, not smart enough, not pretty enough, why can't you be more like your brother or your sister or the kid up the block? I don't know why I even had kids. Ever hear that kind of stuff? Or maybe in a big family felt like you ought to be invisible and stay out of the way because mom and dad were so stressed. And, a kid will go way out of his way or her way to take responsibility for a situation they have nothing to do with. And then as adults, we reject responsibility for the stuff we do bring on ourselves. So don't be afraid to discover the truth of who you are based on this crazy fear from childhood that you're going to find out you're bad, wrong, stupid, and just generally inadequate, not good enough. It's not true. Are you willing to consider that there is goodness and truth and beauty in everyone? I mean, even tiny little bits of goodness, truth, and beauty in the most despicable, vile, evil human being. What if there was just a little shred of goodness, truth, and beauty, even in the most badly behaving individual? Boys behaving badly. What am I trying to say? Even in the worst person. Then surely there would be great amounts of goodness and truth and beauty in most people, and maybe in you enormous amounts of goodness and truth and beauty, and whatever you found that was a little dark or a little shadowy, or maybe that's only because you don't understand it, because you haven't fleshed it out, because you haven't brought your light into the shadowy area here that is new and never really been explored before. And you're there, not looking for the badness, not looking for the inadequacy. Those are all shadows from childhood, fantasies, all made up. What you're looking for is the guarantee that there is goodness and truth and beauty in everyone. Find yours, and there are benefits and qualities of joy and fulfillment that are guaranteed.
I mean, even if you're skeptical, even if you're not certain, aren't you curious about maybe whether we're right? You know, aren't you curious to go see if, in fact, inside of you, there is this amazing, enormous pool of truth and beauty and goodness? It's worth a look. I think now would be a really good time to take that look.
Let's do an audio journey.
Yeah.
Yep. Close your eyes and relax. Get comfortable. Not rigid, just nicely balanced. Head on your shoulders and breathe. Take a few slow, deep breaths. In your own time, in your own way, but slow it down and make it nice, full, deep breathing. And especially on the exhalation, that's where I want you to create and sense a feeling of letting go. Actually, as you exhale, feel muscular tension falling away. Drop it. Or imagine yourself like a snowman in the springtime, slowly melting, or like a stick of butter left out on the countertop, slowly softening. Feel that letting go feeling.
And as you feel the release and the inner peace, you come face to face with your paradise place. And you feel yourself unwind, body and mind. And you create the space in this quieter place where you feel safe and clear, free of the fear, as you submerge and go under. You make room for the wonder.
Within you are universes yet to be explored. And you can decide right now to be an adventurer, to be an explorer of these inner frontiers, to go where no one has gone before. Indeed, that could be your primary mission in life, to explore the universe that is you. Not merely those characters and roles that we've been discussing, that from good intentions, maybe even if we're never manipulative, we just want to please or influence other people. But what about the higher you, the authentic self? There's got to be something genuine and real behind all of that. What part of you is deciding to play this role as opposed to that role, or in this situation to be this kind of character instead of that kind of character? Somebody is making that decision who is neither the role nor the character. That is not the choice, but the one who chooses. Be curious about yourself as the one who chooses.
So this is the part where you ask your heart. That's where you start. What do I care about? What am I curious about? What do I wonder inside? Allow your mind to explore that space. To wonder, not decide, to just wonder, to just be curious, to just be fascinated by what could be. Allow your thoughts to go beyond your current reality. And open up the door for curiosity. And your mind will find that it wants to stay on the bright side of this issue. The dark side of curiosity has no appeal. You're not curious about that which is not your business, to which you are not invited. It's those things that are interesting about yourself that you are most excited. And so you stay to the bright side, the light side, and you're curious and your wonder are things that will take you to actualization, things that will take you to realization, things that will take you to your heart's anticipation. Wonder, and allow that wonder to allow your mind to explore.
To be curious is to sit receptive and open. Release the temptation to fill empty spots in your thoughts with more thoughts, as if slicing and dicing and analyzing and breaking things down into little bits and pieces is the only thing the mind can do. And by sitting receptive, allow those open places to become even more open and receptive to a light, to an illumination. Sometimes you'll be thunderstruck, as if lightning illumines the landscape and changes it forevermore. Sometimes a light bulb will pop on. Good idea. Oh, I remember. You know what I just realized? And sometimes it'll be the dawning, the gradual dawning of a new idea or an insight that slowly occurs to you, but you realize, oh, I see. As the light illumines what's been here all along. But you didn't see it. It was in the shadows. The shadows of fear, the shadows of ignorance, the shadows of doubt, of worry and negativity. And you bring your light and your love and your enthusiasm and your belief in goodness and truth and beauty, albeit in varying degrees, but nevertheless present in all things. And of course, where would that search begin but within you and then out into the world? Know thyself, and then you could not be false to anyone. Develop your abilities, and then give to your friends, your family, your neighbors, your community, your nation, and your world. From the inside out, live your life curious first about yourself, that you might know more about the world around you, and empathize and understand.
So be curious about just what you're going to be curious about the next time you create time to do so, because some wonderful things will come when you bring yourself to go to this peaceful place and allow the space for curiosity to emerge, sometimes in a trickle, sometimes in a surge, but only when life's not quite so furious is there time to be curious. So, with that in mind, bring yourself back in your awareness to the room, to the space that you occupy, to the is that is. And as it feels comfortable for you, take a deep breath and bring yourself back to wide awake.
I think you found the only word that rhymes with curious.
Oh, no, that's spurious.
Oh, there is spurious. You're right. So you'd already thought of that.
I've gone
through
that. Yes, I've gone through them all. I always do.
And we want to thank you for being here. Hope you'll turn your friends on by using the Share One with a Friend button. I know a lot of you just send your subscription to the iTunes software on your computer, or you use that RSS reader in your favorite browser. Maybe you don't even go back to the website very much, but if you keep that password handy, any one of these programs.
We've got like 90-some programs now in the
95.
past. 95 programs in the past episodes that you can get. So
we average usually 50, 55 minutes, so it's over 90 hours of programming.
Yeah. So whatever problem you have to solve or whatever healing your heart needs, we've got an episode just for that.
And add to your collection every week. So we just want to remind you that you can forward an unlimited number of these programs for no charge whatsoever to as many people as you'd like, as often as you want.
So, if you're curious about curiosity, take some time and you'll find out a lot about it. Your mind instantly will go there if you create a space for it to do so.
As always, be gentle, love life, and take care of each other. For Steve Snyder, this is Michael Benner. Aloha from Maui.